Hey there, welcome to the table. I want to do a quick errata video. So I finished the first mission of this campaign. I'm playing the Link campaign. I finished the very first mission. So I want to cover some things because I know as people were starting to discover this series, I made some mistakes that I did eventually figure out, but I want to help you to learn this game as quickly as possible and to know when to ignore something that I say because you are smart enough to know that I made a mistake. And then, of course, to spare some of you from writing in the comments because many of you are catching the same things and then writing in the comments. Also, the rulebook does miss some things, and I was able to speak with Dean and get those corrected. So, a couple of things. The most important one is I did choose to play with the sensor performance expansion, which is a variant that you do not have to use. And my choice to do so has exposed a lot of rule questions that are not necessarily addressed by the rulebook. Some are, some are not. And so I wavered a lot on this, but I am at a spot now where I got it down to a science. But basically, the first thing is we didn't do it wrong in the video, but if you see the word no aircraft, that means you can't fly any helicopters. I know that might make common sense to a lot of people, but it's just not spelled out anywhere. The next thing is that an enemy sub could be shallow or deep. If an enemy sub, well here, let me grab. You have a ship, and in the basic game, detecting subs is this column here. It says range 1 to 3 to detect a sub. So if a sub was 4 or 5 or 6 away, you can't even try to detect it. When you're playing with these cards, that is no longer true. You ignore the range, and you use these numbers here instead. And then you know these are dice modifiers. And so you need to get at least a 5 or an 8 to get a certain level of detection on the sub. And so you could detect subs that are 6 bases away. You're just going to get a -3 to your die roll. Now, one of the things that the rules don't address is that the sonar, which is in red, it ignores these range numbers. And Dean specified that you must use the range that is listed right there, 1 or 2. So a sonar is different. If you're using the black numbers, you use this, and we're talking shallow subs. Okay, now, if you're talking about a deep sub, okay, if you're talking about a deep sub, if your ship has a towed array, which is this TA, you use these numbers along the bottom. And you ignore this number, but you use these numbers to detect a deep sub 1 through 6 away. The sonar does not change. It still is only 1 or 2. But if you don't have a towed array, you have to also apply a -2. Okay? Now, if you have no towed array, what do? How do you detect the deep sub? You use the top numbers, plus you add this to it, the -2. Okay? So, again, the sonar is restricted to the range, and you basically ignore these numbers if you're using sonar, except for this one right here, the -2. Now, the enemy sub, when they're trying to detect you, that -2 always applies to the enemy sub. And if they are a certain range away, you use the range penalties that are written on the board. Okay? So that's the first thing. And you're going to see me struggle with this on the first mission. I got it down now, but for a while that was a problem. Okay, the next thing, which I know a lot of people are starting to comment on, a helicopter. We did establish that it carries 2 torpedoes. What I did was I equipped 2 torpedoes on the helicopter, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm out of torpedoes. I can't sink the sub, because we were in a mission where the helicopter was not allowed to take off. Those munitions are actually on the ship, and then you load them onto the helicopter when it launches. So I was acting like since they were on the helicopter, the ship can't use it. I just want you to understand that a ship can absolutely use those munitions. It was just silly of me to think I couldn't. So that was just a mistake I made. A lot of people were commenting on that, and I just wanted to make sure I saved you the trouble. The next thing is that when you find an enemy sub, so let me grab this situation. So this is an encounter card, and we discover a sub. It doesn't matter which side it is. These are called unknown subs. They're not named, okay? And so what you do is you'll see me. I was drawing cards from the sub deck at first. That's not true. You don't do that. What you do is you draw from the cup, and so you're going to get two things like this. So I'm going to get these enemy subs that are unknown. And so you have to detect them, and then they use a noise management modifier of this. Okay? Now this one is a critical sub, meaning that it's critical that you detect it. Now one of the things that came up in the game is, okay, let's say we do detect it. You flip these over, then you roll a die, and as you can see, there's a possibility that it's actually nothing, like a whale. It could be a neutral sub, or it's an enemy. And then same with this next one, right? It could be an enemy or it could be nothing. So in this situation, let's assume both of these were enemies. Well, one was a star, one wasn't. So I sort of got hung up on, what do I do? In both cases, all you do is you draw the top card from the sub deck. Just because we thought it was a critical sub doesn't mean it is a critical sub. So detecting it is important, or otherwise you lose the mission. But once you detect it, it could just be a nothing burger, or it could just be a regular sub and not a critical one. So you don't go through the sub deck to try to find a critical sub, is what I'm trying to say. So you'll see me struggle a little bit with that logic. It's not fully addressed in the rules, like what you do in that situation, but we got it all hammered out now. And that was straight from the developer himself. The other thing related to this is, let me think for a second. Pings. The rules address when a ping goes away for an enemy sub, but it doesn't address when they go away for you. So I spoke with Dean about this, and he agreed that it was very simple to basically have it this way. If it is a screening force, and they use a ping, the ping goes away when it's the start of the fast turn, and it has to be at least one battle turn after the ping was used. And if it's any of the slow force, then it would go away during the slow turn, and again, it has to be one battle turn after a ping was used. And so, as long as you understand that rule, that's when a ping for a friendly ship on your task force would go away. All right, I think that covers the majority of them. I know, there's a couple of things like where I was realizing that a commander needs to use an action when they shouldn't, but those are just boneheaded mistakes, not necessarily me teaching something weird or wrong. Anyways, I hope that helps you. I'm going to insert this early on in the series. So that way when you're watching Mission 1, you don't have get a wrong understanding of how things work. And then also, if you want to, you could just skip to Mission 2, because all these rules are figured out by now. And so Mission 2 is just getting ready to start, and you'll be able to benefit from, having the rules a bit more crisp. But yeah, these are some of these things you're going to see coming up in Dean's FAQ. Some of these will be in the second edition of the rulebook, especially the pieces that were missing. Like, for example, the rulebook does not address when ping goes away for a friendly. Some of the explanations for the sensor performance are going to be updated. But beyond that, yeah, it's a solid game, and so far I'm very happy with this playthrough. We just really struggled with, some of the modifiers at times. So anyways, thanks for watching as always, and enjoy the series.